The champagne glasses sparkled under the crystal chandeliers at the all-hands company gala. I smoothed down my black dress for the 10th time that evening, my heart hammering against my ribs. Tonight was the night. 2 years of promises, 2 years of 80-hour weeks, 2 years of building an empire while my boss took the credit. But tonight, Cormac would finally announce me as the new VP of Strategic Accounts. The music stopped. Cormac stepped onto the stage, his smile wide and confident. I straightened my shoulders, ready to walk up when he called my name. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice booming through the speakers. "I'm thrilled to introduce the man who's going to take us to the stratosphere, my good friend Thayer." My smile froze. The room erupted in applause as Thayer bounded onto the stage, his expensive suit catching the light. He grabbed the microphone and grinned at the crowd. "Thanks to Junia for keeping the seat warm and taking such good notes." The room laughed. I stood there, paralyzed, as the betrayal crashed over me like a tidal wave. Cormac wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I knew. I wasn't a partner. I was just the help. "My name is Junia, and that night at the gala I realized my loyalty had been my biggest mistake, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 5 years to where this all started. I was 26, fresh out of business school and desperate to prove myself. Cormac hired me as a junior analyst at his consulting firm. He seemed charming back then, full of big promises and bigger dreams. "Work hard and I'll take care of you," he'd said during my interview. I believed him. I started building what would become known as the Titan Portfolio, our $40 million client list. I wasn't just good at my job. I was exceptional. I memorized everything. Client birthdays, their kids' names, their dogs' breeds, their favorite restaurants, contract renewal dates, even their allergies. While other account managers relied on spreadsheets and databases, I carried it all in my head. I saved Cormac's reputation more times than I could count. When he forgot important meetings because he was on the golf course, I covered for him. When he made promises he couldn't keep, I worked overnight to deliver. I built the throne he sat on, brick by brick. 6 months before the gala, everything changed. The company was struggling. 3 major clients had threatened to leave. Revenue was down. The board was asking hard questions. Cormac called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. He looked desperate, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. "Junia, I need you," he said, leaning forward across his desk. "The Apex Tech deal, if we land them, we're saved. If we don't, we might have to start laying people off." He paused, looking me directly in the eyes. "Land this deal and the VP chair is yours, I give you my word." I felt a surge of hope. Finally, recognition. A title that matched my contributions. "I won't let you down," I promised. I threw myself into the Apex pursuit. I worked 80-hour weeks. I missed my best friend's wedding. I practically lived at the office, surviving on coffee and takeout. I studied Apex's business model until I could recite their quarterly reports from memory. 3 months later, I closed the deal. It was the biggest contract in company history, $12 million annually. Cormac hugged me in front of the whole office. "You did it, partner," he said. I should have known that word meant nothing to him. 3 months before the gala, Thayer appeared. Cormac called an impromptu team meeting on a Monday morning. "Everyone, I want you to meet Thayer," he announced, his arm around a tall man in an overly expensive suit. "He's my old college roommate, and he's joining us as Senior Account Director." I felt my stomach drop. Senior Account Director reported directly to the VP position I'd been promised. Thayer grinned at everyone, his confidence bordering on arrogance. He had the look of someone who'd never struggled a day in his life. "Great to be here," he said loudly. "Looking forward to crushing it with you all." Cormac pulled me aside after the meeting. "Junia, I need you to onboard Thayer, show him the ropes. He's got incredible executive presence, but he needs someone detail-oriented to help him get up to speed." I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and nodded. Of course. The onboarding was a nightmare. Thayer was lazy. He'd ask me to complete his spreadsheets. He called clients by the wrong names. He spent most days networking, which meant drinking scotch in his office with the door closed. When I gently tried to warn Cormac, he dismissed me. "Thayer has executive presence, Junia. You could learn from him." The weeks leading up to the gala felt like slow torture. I started noticing small changes. I'd be left off email chains I'd always been included on. Thayer would suddenly be presenting my slides in client meetings, reading directly from my notes without understanding the content. When I confronted Cormac about it, he gaslighted me. "We're a team, Junia. Stop being so territorial. It's unbecoming for someone who wants to move into leadership. I felt like I was going crazy. Was I being paranoid? Was I too sensitive? But the evidence kept piling up. My access to certain client files was suddenly accidentally revoked. Thayer got invited to executive lunches I wasn't told about. I'd walk into rooms and conversations would stop. Still, I clung to hope. I had the results. I had the $40 million portfolio. I had the relationships. Those things had to count for something. On the morning of the gala, Cormac sent me a message. Wear something nice tonight. Big announcement. My heart soared. I went out and bought a new dress. I got my hair done. I practiced my acceptance speech in the mirror. I was such a fool. Back at the gala, minutes after Thayer's announcement, I found myself in the bathroom. My hands gripped the marble sink as I stared at my reflection. My carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the devastation in my eyes. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march back into that ballroom and throw my champagne in Cormac's face. Instead, I washed my hands slowly, breathing deeply. Then something shifted inside me. The hurt transformed into something cold and sharp. I dried my hands, fixed my lipstick, and made a decision. I walked out of the bathroom, past the open bar where Thayer was doing shots with the sales team, past Cormac who was laughing with board members. I left the hotel and walked straight to our office building next door. It was nearly 10 at night. The building was empty except for security. I badged in and went to my office. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't touch my computer. I knew they'd check for data theft. Instead, I sat in the darkness and opened my purse. I pulled out a leather notebook I'd bought that afternoon and a pen. Then I entered my memory palace and started writing. I spent 4 hours in that dark office, writing by the light of my phone. Every critical detail of our top 20 clients went into that notebook. Contract terms, renewal dates, key contacts, personal information, pain points, preferences. Information that existed nowhere else but in my head. Information I'd spent 5 years collecting. When I finished, my hand was cramping and my eyes were burning. But I had everything I needed. I locked the notebook in my car and went home. On Monday morning, I walked into Cormac's office. He was on the phone, his feet up on his desk. When he saw me, he quickly ended the call. "Junia, great party Friday, huh?" He grinned like nothing had happened. I placed a single sheet of paper on his desk, my resignation letter. Generic, professional, effective immediately. Cormac's smile faded. He picked up the letter and read it, then laughed. "You're making a mistake. You have a non-compete clause. You leave here, you starve. Besides, who's going to hire you without my reference?" I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who just declared war. "I'll take my chances." I placed my laptop, my company phone, and my security badge on his desk. Then I walked out with nothing but my purse. I heard him yelling as I reached the elevator. I didn't look back. The first week of unemployment was terrifying. I'd never been without a job since college. My savings would last maybe 3 months if I was careful. Maybe. The non-compete clause haunted me. I'd signed it without really reading it years ago when I was desperate for the job. Now it felt like a noose around my neck. I made an appointment with an employment lawyer. Her name was Delilah Cross, and she had a reputation for being ruthless. I brought my contract and explained the situation. Delilah read through the non-compete carefully, her expression growing grimmer. "This is pretty ironclad, Junia," she finally said. "You can't solicit their clients for 12 months. If you do, they can sue you for damages and legal fees. You'd be destroyed financially." I felt my hope crumbling. Then I leaned forward. "What if I don't solicit them? What if they contact me?" Delilah's eyebrows rose. She leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "That's a different story entirely. If clients leave of their own accord and choose to work with you, that's their right. The non-compete can't prevent clients from making their own business decisions." She paused. "But why would they contact you?" I smiled. "Because Thayer doesn't know the passwords." I learned what was happening inside the company through Lark, my former assistant. She was still trapped there, now reporting to Thayer. She'd text me updates, careful to delete them immediately after sending. 2 weeks after I left, chaos erupted. Thayer couldn't access the Apex Tech client dashboard. The system required 2-factor authentication, and I'd set it up using my personal phone. Apex's CFO had requested the quarterly projection report. It was due on a Wednesday. Thayer panicked and sent them last year's report with the dates changed. Apex noticed immediately. Their CFO called Cormac directly. "Where is Junia?" he demanded. The new guy sent us outdated garbage. This is unacceptable. Cormac tried to smooth it over. He called me 17 times that day. I watched my phone buzz on the kitchen counter and didn't answer once. He left voicemails that progressed from friendly to frustrated to angry. Junia, we need to talk. Junia, this is childish. Junia, call me back immediately. I deleted them all without listening to the end. Lark texted me that night. The office is a disaster. Thayer is freaking out. Cormac is screaming at everyone. 3 clients have called asking for you. This is beautiful. I smiled in my empty apartment. The plan was working, but I needed to be patient. I needed to be smart. I knew Mr. Silas's routine better than he probably knew it himself. He was the CEO of our second largest client, worth $8 million annually. Every Tuesday, he ran in Riverside Park at 6 in the morning, rain or shine. 3 weeks after I left, I was there. I wore running gear and pulled my hair into a ponytail. I didn't plan to approach him directly. That would violate the non-compete. But if we happened to cross paths naturally, well, that was just coincidence. I was stretching near the fountain when I saw him approaching. He was in his 60s, fit, always wearing a Yankees cap. As he jogged past, I called out casually. Morning, Mr. Silas. He stopped, surprised, and pulled out his earbuds. Junia, what are you doing here? I run here sometimes, I said truthfully. I'd started running this route the week before. How was your daughter's violin recital? His entire face changed. He looked stunned. You remembered that? Of course, I said simply. He looked tired suddenly, older. The recital was beautiful, but things have been rough at work. He hesitated. The new guy, Thayer, he called my daughter my son yesterday on a call. He doesn't even read the files. I nodded sympathetically. I'm sorry to hear that. What are you doing now? He asked. Consulting, I said carefully. Specialized client work, but obviously I can't discuss anything regarding your account. My hands are tied. I smiled regretfully. The seed was planted. Mr. Silas called Cormac that same afternoon. Lark sent me the play-by-play. Apparently, Silas screamed so loud that people in the hallway could hear him. I don't care about your non-compete clause. I want Junia on my account or I'm terminating this contract. Cormac tried to calm him down. He promised that Thayer would improve. He offered discounts. He begged. Silas gave him 1 week to fix things. Cormac immediately dragged Thayer into his office. He told him to take Silas out for dinner, to fix the relationship, to prove he could handle the account. Thayer took Silas to an expensive steakhouse that Friday night. According to Lark, who heard it from someone in accounting, it was a disaster. Thayer got drunk on expensive wine. He talked about himself the entire time. He made an inappropriate joke about Silas's assistant. Then, when the waiter brought the wrong side dish, Thayer berated him loudly in front of everyone. Silas watched in disgust. He left the restaurant after the appetizers, leaving Thayer alone with the check. On Monday morning, Silas sent a formal letter. He was terminating the contract. $8 million gone. Cormac's company had just lost one of its biggest clients, and everyone knew it was because of Thayer. But more importantly, they knew it wouldn't have happened if I'd been there. On a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the Silas disaster, someone knocked on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw Cormac standing there in an expensive suit, holding a folder. My heart raced. I considered not answering, but curiosity won. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. What do you want? I asked coldly. To talk, he said. He looked uncomfortable, which gave me satisfaction. Can I come in? No, he sighed. Fine, Junia, I'm here to offer you a deal. Come back as a consultant. We'll pay you double your old salary. You can work on your own terms, set your own hours. You'll have full access to your old accounts. I felt my resolve waver. Double my salary. That was serious money. That would solve all my financial problems. I could pay off my student loans. I could finally afford a decent apartment. Cormac saw me hesitating. He pressed on. You were always the best, Junia. I should have recognized that sooner. Let me make it right. I was about to speak when I glanced past him to the parking lot. Thayer was sitting in Cormac's car, playing on his phone, looking bored. And suddenly I saw the future. I'd come back. I'd do all the work. Thayer would take the credit. Nothing would actually change. No, I said firmly. Why not? Cormac looked genuinely confused. I don't work for Thayer, I said. Then I closed the door in his face. I heard him calling my name through the door. I turned up my music and ignored him until he left. I spent the next week setting up my own consulting agency. I called it Junia Strategic Solutions. I had almost no money left. I maxed out a credit card to pay for basic website hosting and business cards. My office was my kitchen table. I had 0 clients and mounting panic, but I had a plan. On a Tuesday morning, I posted a simple update on LinkedIn. Grateful for the journey. Excited to launch my boutique firm focusing on personalized client care and strategic relationship management. That was it. No client names, no accusations, nothing that could be considered solicitation. I didn't even tag the company I'd left. The post was professional and vague, but here's what I was counting on. The algorithm. Social media shows your posts to people you interact with regularly, and for 5 years, I'd been interacting with our clients constantly. Commenting on their posts, congratulating them on promotions, engaging with their content. LinkedIn would show my post to exactly the people I needed to see it. I published the post and closed my laptop. Now I just had to wait. The first call came 3 hours later. It was the CFO from Meridian Analytics, a $4 million client. Junia, I saw your post. We need to talk. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone rang constantly. Not because I'd asked anyone to call. I hadn't. But because the clients were desperate. They'd call, frustrated and angry, complaining about Thayer's incompetence, missed deadlines, rude emails, forgotten meetings. He called me by my VP's name for an entire conference call, one client told me. He doesn't even know who I am. Another said, he sent us a proposal for a completely different company. He literally just changed the name in the header and forgot to update the content. I listened sympathetically to each one. I was careful with my words. I recorded every conversation on my phone just to protect myself. I can't ask you to leave your current firm, I'd say clearly. That's entirely your decision, but if you choose to make a change, I'd be honored to work with you. One by one, they made their choice. We've already sent our termination letters to Cormac, they'd say. Can you start next week? Within 2 weeks, 3 mid-sized clients left Cormac's firm and signed with mine. That was $10 million in annual recurring revenue. Gone from his company, now funding mine. I hired Delilah to draft airtight contracts. I was meticulous about documentation. Every client who came to me did so of their own free will. I had recordings to prove it. I was ready for whatever Cormac would do next. And I knew he'd do something. He was too arrogant not to. Cormac lost his mind. Lark sent me screenshots of his furious emails to the IT department. He was convinced I'd stolen the client database. He demanded they sweep my old laptop, my old phone, every device I'd ever touched. He hired a forensic IT team to search for evidence of data theft. They spent 3 days analyzing my digital footprint. They went through every email, every file access, every download. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. I hadn't taken a single byte of data. Everything I needed was in my head and in a notebook locked in my bedroom safe. The IT report came back clean. Cormac refused to believe it. She must have used a personal device, he shouted in a meeting. She must have taken photos of the screen, checked the security cameras. But there was nothing on the cameras either. I'd been smart. I'd been careful. According to Lark, Cormac was spiraling. He'd lost $15 million in revenue in 3 weeks. The board was asking hard questions. His investors were panicking. And worst of all, more clients were asking about me. Where did Junia go? They'd ask. Can we work with her instead? Cormac couldn't answer them. He couldn't stop them from leaving, and he couldn't prove I'd done anything illegal. That's when he decided to play dirty. I got the certified letter on a Wednesday afternoon. Cormac was suing me for theft of trade secrets, for breach of contract, for tortious interference. The lawsuit claimed that my memory itself was company property. The lawsuit was brutal. Cormac's legal team filed for an emergency temporary restraining order. They argued that I was actively destroying his business by using confidential information I'd memorized. The judge granted it. Just like that, I was legally forbidden from contacting any of my new clients. I couldn't work. I couldn't earn money. The contracts I'd just signed were frozen. Even worse, Cormac's lawyers convinced the judge to freeze my business bank accounts pending the investigation. They claimed the money I'd been paid was proceeds from theft. I was completely shut down. I called Delilah in a panic. Can they do this? They just did, she said grimly. This is a SLAPP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. He's not trying to win. He's trying to bleed you dry so you can't fight back. Most people would fold right now and settle. What do I do? I asked. My voice was shaking. We fight, Delilah said, but I need to be honest with you. This is going to be expensive. My retainer alone is $15,000, and this could drag on for months. I had maybe $3,000 left to my name. My rent was due in a week. I'd already maxed out 2 credit cards. I was going to lose everything. And Cormac knew it. That was his plan. Destroy me financially so I couldn't compete. Make an example of me so no one else would ever dare leave. It was working. Cormac didn't just sue me. He went scorched earth. He called mutual contacts in the industry and told them I'd been fired for embezzlement. He posted vague warnings on industry forums about unethical consultants stealing client data. He never mentioned my name directly, but everyone knew who he meant. The Whisper campaign worked. The landlord I'd been negotiating with for office space suddenly backed out of our deal. "We've heard some concerning things," he said vaguely. "We can't take the risk." A potential new client who'd reached out to me suddenly ghosted. I found out later that Cormac had called him personally. I was operating out of my kitchen, facing bankruptcy, with my professional reputation in tatters. I couldn't work. I couldn't defend myself publicly without violating the restraining order. I was trapped. I spent my days sending out resumes, hoping someone would hire me for any job. But Cormac's smear campaign had worked too well. No one in the industry would touch me. I was toxic. One night I sat on my kitchen floor, surrounded by legal documents and past due bills, and cried. 5 years of work, 5 years of sacrificing everything. And this was where it got me. Maybe Cormac was right. Maybe I should have just stayed in my place and been grateful for the scraps. Then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at Rosie's Diner tomorrow, 7 a.m. Come alone, L. Lark." I arrived at the diner 10 minutes early. It was a rundown place on the edge of town, the kind of spot where nobody from our industry would ever go. Lark showed up right at 7, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses like she was in a spy movie. She slid into the booth across from me and glanced around nervously. "Are you okay?" I asked. She looked exhausted. "I'm quitting," she said. "Thayer is impossible. Cormac is spiraling. The whole place is falling apart." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small USB drive. She slid it across the table toward me. My heart started pounding. "What is this?" "You didn't steal anything," Lark whispered, leaning forward. "But Thayer did," she explained quickly. Thayer had been overwhelmed by the workload after I left, so he'd done what lazy people do. He outsourced the work to a cheap company he found online, some outfit operating overseas. He'd been sending them confidential client data. Financial reports, strategic plans, proprietary information, everything. The problem? The overseas company was storing everything on unsecured servers. No encryption, no security protocols. It was a massive compliance violation. Any of our clients in regulated industries could face huge fines if this came out. "How did you find this?" I asked. "He's an idiot," Lark said. "He left his email open on his computer when he went to lunch. I saw the invoices. I dug deeper." The USB contained email chains, invoices, and server logs, proof of everything. I stared at the drive like it was a live grenade. "This could destroy them," I said slowly. Lark nodded. "That's the point." I spent the next 2 days staring at that USB drive. I knew what was on it could end Cormac's company overnight. I could leak it to industry blogs. I could send it to the press. I could watch everything burn. But using stolen data would make me just like them. It would prove Cormac's accusations right. It would destroy any moral high ground I had. I called Delilah. I explained what I had and asked for her advice. "If you leak this publicly, you're opening yourself up to legal trouble," she said. "Lark took this data without authorization. Using it could make you an accomplice." "What if I don't leak it?" I asked. "What if I just inform the people who need to know?" Delilah was quiet for a moment. "If you're alerting clients to a legitimate security risk involving their own data, that's different. You'd be acting in their interest, not yours." That gave me an idea. I wouldn't leak the documents to the press. I wouldn't use them to attack Cormac directly. Instead, I'd send them to exactly the people who needed to see them. The clients. Specifically, their chief compliance officers and general counsels. The people whose job it was to protect their companies from exactly this kind of risk. I drafted a simple, professional email. "I've become aware of a potential security issue involving your confidential data. I thought you should know that your information may currently be hosted on unsecured servers outside your control. Please see the attached documentation." I didn't mention Thayer. I didn't mention Cormac's company name. I just presented the facts and let them investigate. I sent the emails at midnight on a Sunday. Then I waited. The clients investigated. They had to. When a compliance officer receives credible evidence of a data breach, they're legally required to look into it. They traced the IP addresses in the server logs. They contacted the overseas company. They demanded explanations from Cormac and Thayer. What they found was worse than I'd imagined. The overseas outfit had been hacked 3 months ago. Client data had potentially been exposed. Financial information, trade secrets, strategic plans, everything. This wasn't just bad service anymore. It was a catastrophic security breach. The clients had to report it to regulators. They had to notify their own customers. They faced potential fines and lawsuits, and the source of the breach was clear. Thayer had violated every security protocol in existence. Cormac, as CEO, was ultimately responsible. Apex Tech, the $12 million whale I'd landed, was the first to act. They terminated their contract with Cormac's firm immediately for cause. That meant no payout, no transition period, just immediate termination. Within 48 hours, 8 more clients followed. Cormac's firm lost 60% of its revenue in 2 days. The company was bleeding out. The board called an emergency meeting. And suddenly, Cormac had much bigger problems than suing me. Lark texted me updates. "They're trying to figure out who sent the emails. Cormac thinks it was you." But they can't prove it, and honestly, they're too busy drowning to care. I sat in my kitchen and allowed myself a small smile. I hadn't attacked them. I just told the truth, and the truth had destroyed them all by itself. The injunction hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning. Cormac's lawyers were confident. They'd been destroying me in the preliminary motions, arguing that I was a thief who'd weaponized her memory against her former employer. I sat at the defense table next to Delilah, trying to look calm. But my hands were shaking. Everything depended on this. If the judge made the injunction permanent, I was finished. I'd never work in the industry again. Cormac's lead attorney was a man named Pierce Hammond, known for being ruthless. He presented his case smoothly. He argued that I'd memorized trade secrets, that my memory itself was a tool of theft, that I'd violated the trust of my employer. "Your Honor," Hammond said dramatically, "if we allow employees to simply memorize proprietary information and walk out the door, no company in America is safe." Then it was our turn. Delilah stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like Ms. Junia to demonstrate something for the court." The judge looked curious. "Go ahead." I stood up, my heart pounding. "Your Honor, could I prove that I didn't need to steal their client list, that I simply have an exceptional memory?" Cormac's lawyers objected. The judge overruled them. He looked intrigued. "How would you prove that?" he asked. "Pick any client file Mr. Cormac has in front of him," I said. "Anyone at random, I'll tell you everything about that client from memory." The judge gestured to Cormac. "Choose one." Cormac's face was red with anger. He grabbed a file folder and opened it. "Davenport Industries," he said. I closed my eyes, entering my memory palace. Then I began to speak. "Davenport Industries," I said, my eyes still closed. "Contract signed March 14th, 3 years ago. Annual value $1.2 million. CEO is Marcus Davenport. He has 3 children, Tyler, who's 16 and plays lacrosse, Kendra, who's 13 and is allergic to shellfish, and Amelia, who's 9 and takes ballet classes on Thursday evenings. Their dog is a golden retriever named Biscuit. Marcus's wedding anniversary is June 7th. His wife's name is Victoria, and she runs a nonprofit for literacy programs." I opened my eyes. Cormac's lawyer was staring at me. The judge looked amazed. "Continue," the judge said, so I did. I recited their contract terms, the payment schedule, their last 3 projects, the names of everyone on their executive team, their quarterly revenue targets, the specific concerns Marcus had raised in our last meeting 6 months ago. Then the judge said, "Another one." Cormac grabbed a different file. We did this 5 times, 5 different clients. I recited details about each one from memory. The judge finally held up his hand. "That's enough." He looked at Cormac's lawyers. "You're arguing that she stole this information, but she just demonstrated that she has perfect recall. You can't sue someone for having a good memory." Pierce Hammond tried to object. "Your Honor, the information itself is..." "Is what?" the judge interrupted. "Public. Most of what she recited is information any account manager would know about their clients. The restraining order is lifted. This case is dismissed." The gavel came down. I had won. 2 weeks after the hearing, Cormac's company was in free fall. They'd lost most of their major clients. The board had launched an investigation into the data breach. Investors were demanding answers. I was in a coffee shop working on my laptop when Cormac appeared. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His hair was messy. The confidence was gone. He sat down across from me without asking permission. "Junia," he said quietly, "we need to talk." "No, we don't," I said, not looking up from my screen. "Please," he said. There was something in his voice, something broken. I looked at him. He'd aged 10 years in 2 months. "I built that company," he said, his voice cracked. 15 years of my life. You're destroying families, Junia. People are losing their jobs because of you." I felt a flash of anger. I closed my laptop and leaned forward. "I didn't destroy your company, Cormac, you did. You destroyed it when you valued your golf buddy over the person who actually did the work. You destroyed it when you lied to me for 2 years. You destroyed it when you hired Thayer and let him compromise client data because you were too lazy to do your job." My voice was cold. "I didn't take your clients. I didn't steal anything. You drove them away by being incompetent. They came to me because I actually care about their businesses, because I remember their kids' names, because I do the work." Cormac stared at me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't promote you. I'm sorry about everything." "It's too late for sorry," I said. I stood up and packed my laptop. "You had every chance to do the right thing. You chose wrong every single time." I walked away and left him sitting there alone. It was the last time I ever saw him in person. 3 months later, Cormac's company entered formal liquidation. The board voted to remove him as CEO for gross negligence. The data breach scandal had made it impossible for them to attract new clients. The remaining staff, the good ones who'd done nothing wrong, were laid off. It was sad, but it wasn't my fault. Thayer was quietly fired after they discovered he'd also been embezzling money he'd set aside for severance payments. He was facing criminal charges. I heard he moved back in with his parents. Meanwhile, my business was growing fast. I'd signed 8 new clients. I needed a bigger office. I needed staff. And then I heard about the liquidation auction. Cormac's company was selling off everything: office furniture, equipment, the lease on their beautiful downtown space. I made a few calls. I placed some bids. On a Tuesday morning, I walked into the auction house. I bought their office equipment for 30 cents on the dollar. Conference tables. Ergonomic chairs. The standing desks I'd always wanted but Cormac had said were too expensive. And then I did something that felt like cosmic justice. I hired the staff. Lark was first. I offered her a position as my director of operations with a 40% raise from what Cormac had paid her. She cried when I made the offer. I hired Marcus, the data analyst who'd always been overlooked. I hired Nicole, the junior account manager who'd been forced to work under Thayer. I hired everyone who'd actually done the work while Cormac and Thayer took the credit. I gave them the salaries they deserved. I gave them the respect they'd earned. We moved into our new office on a Monday. It was 3 times the size of my old workspace at Cormac's firm. The one that should have been mine 2 years ago. The one he'd promised me. 6 months after the gala where everything fell apart, I stood in my corner office. It was the executive suite, the one that had been meant for Thayer. The movers had just installed the sign outside. Junia and Partners Strategic Solutions. I looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. Movement caught my eye. On the street below, I saw Cormac. He was arguing with a parking attendant, gesturing angrily, looking small and bitter. For a moment, I felt something, not quite pity. Maybe just recognition of how far we'd both traveled from that gala night. My phone rang, pulling my attention away. I glanced at the screen. It was a new client referred by Mr. Silas. A potential contract worth $6 million annually. I smiled and picked up the phone. "This is Junia," I said, turning away from the window. "How can I help you?" And just like that, I stopped looking back. I stopped thinking about what Cormac had taken from me. Because I'd built something better than a VP title at someone else's company. I'd built my own empire. And this time, nobody could take it away. I'd learned the hard way that loyalty without respect is just exploitation. That doing the work isn't enough if someone else is taking the credit. That sometimes the only way to get what you deserve is to walk away and build it yourself. The client on the phone was explaining their needs. I pulled out my notebook, the same leather one I'd used that night in the dark office, and started taking notes. Not because I needed to, I'd remember every word, but because this was my company now, my rules, my success, and I was just getting started.